Hello, and welcome to Lightwork Presents Everything is Connected, the Sharjah Biennial 16 edition, sponsored by the Sharjah Art Foundation.
I'm your host, Folasade Ologundudu.
The Sharjah Art Foundation is an advocate, catalyst, and producer of contemporary art within the Emirate of Sharjah and the surrounding region. In dialogue with the international arts community, the Foundation advances an experimental and wide-ranging programmatic model that supports the production and presentation of contemporary art, preserves and celebrates the distinct culture of the region, and encourages a shared understanding of the transformational role of art. Organized by the Foundation, Sharjah Biennial's 16th edition, SB16, convenes under the title To Carry, a multivocal and open-ended proposition, exploring the ever-expanding questions of what it means to carry and how to carry it. SB16 is an invitation to encounter the different formations and positions of the 5 curators, as well as the constellation of resonances they have gathered. Curated by Aliyah Swastika, Amal Khalaf, Megan Tamati Quinnell, Natasha Jin, and Zainab Oz, the biennial unveiled more than 650 works by nearly 200 participants, including more than 200 new commissions. The biennial was launched on February 6, 2025, and will continue through June 15, 2025. During this exclusive capsule season, I'll engage in dialogue and discourse with artists participating in the Sharjah Biennial who are presenting new commissions. Throughout the series, you'll hear from artists across the globe, from Australia and Kenya to London and Nigeria and more. You'll hear us discuss a wide range of topics, from each artist's practice to their reflections on our society and the questions they investigate through their work. Please join me as I share these dynamic conversations with you, exploring the ins and outs and inner worlds of artists participating in the Sharjah Biennial with their newly commissioned works. Let's go! On this episode, I'm joined by Cassi Namoda as we discuss her newly commissioned work presented for the 16th edition of the Sharjah Biennial, elucidated through the curatorial theme To Carry, asking questions such as, what does it mean to carry a home, a history, a language, a legacy, and a lineage? Born in Maputo, Mozambique, Cassi Namoda is known for her strong color palette and narrative approach to painting. Her hybrid narratives are at once wondrous and poignant, everyday and fantastical, archival and current. Cassi's work transfigures the cultural mythologies and historical narratives of life in post-colonial Africa, particularly those of the artist's familial home of Mozambique. The idiosyncratic subjects who appear and reappear in her paintings also convey this hybridity. They emerge from African indigenous religions just as much as they spring from Western mythologies. Cassi's work is held in the collections of the Perez Art Museum in Miami, the Baltimore Museum of Art in Baltimore, the Makal Museum in Marrakesh, and the Studio Museum in Harlem, New York. In this episode, we discuss her evolving body of work, including paintings that originated at the Joseph and Annie Albers residency in Connecticut that connect to her current paintings on view for the Sharjah Biennial 16. In the works, she explores themes of climate change and matriarchal societies, while emphasizing the holistic interconnectedness of her art and life. She also reflects on the importance of preserving ancestral knowledge and matriarchal wisdom, the role of women in society, and how her experiences as a mother influence her artistic practice. The conversation underscores the interconnected nature of life and art, advocating for self-attunement and holistic living. Let's dive into my next episode with Cassi Namoda.
I'm Cassi Namoda. I am an artist.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for joining me on an episode of Everything is Connected, the Sharjah Biennial 16 edition. And we had a recording that we did in Sharjah during the opening week. And now we're following up on some of that, but also talking about a few other parts of your practice. So I'll start with the first question. Can you share a little bit about the works you were originally making at the Joseph and Annie Albers residency in Connecticut, and how these works are a part of the same body of work that you're showing in Sharjah right now for the biennial?
Yeah, whilst I was in the Joseph and Annie Albers residency in Connecticut, I started but did not complete a body of work where I was thinking about catastrophes around climate change in sub-Saharan Africa and the global south. And I was making sketches and figuring out palette, and that was it. So there was these incomplete works sitting in my studio. And then when Natasha Ginwala was in touch with me about Sharjah, I instantly connected to those works when we were talking about bodies of water. And then so I thought about that in relationship to previous painting I had done for Mendes Wood in Brazil called The Sun Has Not Yet Burned Off the Dew. And then I made these larger figurative paintings with this whale showing up on the shoreline. And the whale shows up as this sort of martyr figure. And then you have the mother and child depiction. So that comes much later in the process. But all these works actually are full circle because even the works I studied at Albers end up being relational to these Flemish primitive paintings I was exploring, one of them at the Studio Museum. So, yeah, they're all extensions and they almost feel like periods to the end of a sentence because I felt like I was able to complete both explorations via the curatorial ambitions around the Natasha's curatorial ideas. And then I was simultaneously working on Equator's Forfeit for Xavier Hopkins. So it was nice because I had these pauses and then I was able to return to them. So they kept like building. So I really feel like these paintings are like layers.
Yeah, I love your response. It makes me think about a lot of different things, and I feel like we could go in different directions. But one of the things that's coming up for me is like the title of the show is called Everything is Connected. And I think you alluded to that in your explanation just now. This full circle moment, these moments of drawing connections and having a thread that really is sewn through your entire practice in different bodies of work and being made at different times, but in some ways investigating similar ideas, similar concepts than the creative output. Could you speak about a little bit about like your response to that idea that things are connected and that there's this thread in your practice that shows up in different ways?
Yeah, I like to always use this term like dovetail. Like I'm always dovetailing like concepts and themes and past historical accounts, personal narrative. I think that's what makes for very rich storytelling. For me, it's just being attuned, having a kind of self conversation, dialogue, and then if you're in the rhythm of things and then it just starts to pour out of you. So I always like to think of things having this very holistic interconnectedness, right? And if you're in your ebb and flow, it just comes through you. So that's how I love to work. It's okay. I'm wearing this color today, which might be, right now I'm wearing blues, but if I'm,
Right.
yeah, blue is so fresh, especially in the spring. I'm like, oh, I love it. The blues, stripes, cotton.
Yes.
Um, but actually, yeah, I'm wearing blues now, and I just finished a body of work that is very much connected to different shades of blue. So I think that it's all inherent, right? Because essentially any practice is a reflection of you. So if you're in this really good self attunement and you're refining yourself, then that just keeps feeding into the external world that you're building around you, whether it be your people, your tastes, what you're eating, music, practice. So that it keeps life fresh.
Yes, I love that. And it feels like that's something that's so important right now in the current climate, that we are just thinking deeply about how we're invigorating our lives and not getting swept up in the monotony and the day-to-dayness of everyday life. So I love that you shared that.
Thank you. I agree. I agree. Not getting caught up in the monotony of everything. It's easy to do.
Yeah, and it takes the work and the time and the dedication to say, I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to do something different. And that level of commitment is admirable in moments like what we're living through now.
Yeah, it's also like stepping outside of capitalism, but then it's like there's a big freedom, right? If we're having to hoard ourselves to navigate things that we're being told to do and how to do it and how we should receive things, and then of course then you're going to be caught up doing those things, and then every day is quite monotonous. But if you're living life on how you enjoy your everyday, like what makes you feel good, then that's very refreshing. Okay, I have a kid now, but if I had all the freedom, I could probably do that with her. I would go to the mountain and I would show her a moving waterfall and a nice crystal clear alpine river, and perhaps we would have some cheese and crackers and we would just enjoy the sunshine and bake in the nature. And that would be really fun for me and for her, and that's like me navigating outside of the monotony, let's say that.
Yes, yes, indeed. I love your response. In collaborating with Natasha, I often think, and it's probably coming up for me more now because of the show and doing this season, where I recognize that collaboration is deeply a part of the process of being involved in a close dialogue with one curator, with several around a biennial. A lot of artists have had different reflections on being in dialogue with the curators that they worked with, and how the exchange of ideas, different kinds of conversations were able to birth how do I want to say this? That new creativity could be birthed out of the dialogue that they had. So I'd love to hear you share maybe a little bit about how some of your conversations with Natasha supported your process, or maybe brought new ideas to you. What were some of those conversations like, those early conversations when you were talking about participating in the work that you were going to present?
It was wonderful to work with Natasha. She's such a brilliant mind, and there's of course a lot to learn from her. And she's a really great curator, so that was already a nice foot. But I think for me, it was just the art of listening, right? Thinking about what Natasha has to share, what she had envisioned. So it was more for me the way it felt like it was like she was coming to me with something instinctive and intuitive. And then it was my job as the artist to fruition it, consider her and consider the Biennale and consider the moment in time in the world, and then what it is that I have to offer. So that was really it. It was really coming from a deep respect and gratitude and sharing ideas and seeing what she felt attuned and attracted to, and that, so that was nice for me because it wasn't like a design project, but it was like a brilliant mind had the intuition to come to me to actualize what they were ruminating about. So that was nice. And then I just took it and ran with it.
Let's take a moment and roll the tape back to the opening week of the Sharjah Biennial 16, when Cassi and I were on location speaking about her newly commissioned works.
So we're here in Sharjah, and you're participating, Cassi, in a new commission for the Sharjah Biennale 16. And yeah, maybe you can share with me a little bit, if you could describe the work, what's happening in the work?
Okay, there's two rooms in my participation at the Sharjah Biennale, and one room is more circulating around abundance and the matriarchal figure. And so in the Kalavangaeti room, which is the room with the mother and child figure, there's in the foreground you have the mother and child figure, which we've seen historically in art history. And then we have the beached whale that comes to shore and essentially is expiring. And that whale actually is symbolic for a martyr. And so I'm exploring themes of religious painting, but also dovetailing local mythology. So in Mozambique, they believe there's been several accounts of a whale coming to shore to die or to expire, and they believe that this is a phenomenon sent by a higher power, and that it's lending itself to the community, and they call it a kalavangaeti, which means something that never ends. Essentially, the flesh never ends. So I center this around around abundance, the matriarch figure, and the matriarch figure being a storyteller, and that essentially there's abundance. So then we have the other room, carapau in the deep abyss, which carapau is a kind of carp fish. And here I'm looking at collective labor and how communities in the global south have been resilient in essentially collectively working together with any calamity, whether it be climate change or political upheavals. And usually the outcome of these scenarios is forced migration. So within the forced migration context, I have two figures collecting textile in the flood paintings, maybe to assume that they have slept on the roadside. Then you have a boy collecting mackerel fish. The history of the symbolism of the mackerel fish is that during the Cold War in Mozambique, the only protein source that was existing was this mackerel fish. So I thought about it in a future tense, and that mackerel fish now is the only protein source around, and it's collectively harvested through community. And all the mackerels are placed in fractals, and in the Carapau Deep Abyss painting, you have this matriarchal figure showing them how to make these fractals.
And for those who are familiar with your practice and have been following your work for some time, or have seen the evolution and progression of your painting practice, are you exploring and investigating new ideas and also potentially any new techniques, new use of color? Are there things in this new body of work that are at all a slight departure, or are they a continuation?
Yeah.
Can we just...
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because of that sound, yeah. It's definitely a continuation. I've been exploring flood paintings and paintings around climate change. And then also the matriarchal figure has been something I've always examined and explored, often because I reference art history. So they're essentially a continuation, and especially with the whale paintings, during COVID, I made a body of work for Mendes Wood, and the paintings were religious inspired Flemish paintings, and I also have this whale as a martyr. So in the room there's a sculpture of a timbila instrument, and I use that instrument to maybe symbolize the whale jaw, because the whale is a very symphonic animal. Creature. So yeah, essentially it's a continuation. Colors are always changing. I started these paintings at the Joseph and Annie Albers residency in Connecticut, but then once I started having conversations with Natasha Ginwala, the painting started to morph a little bit and fit more of the curatorial theme.
Your contribution to the Sharjah Biennial includes paintings that portray acts of labor and scenes of motherhood along Mozambique's shoreline, and really emphasize storytelling and matrilineal stewardship. I wanted to ask, can you speak about the role of women and the matriarch in your work and why this is something you're investigating in your practice now, or maybe more broadly?
With this body of work, I was thinking maybe closer to an origin story, and northern Mozambique is a matriarchal society. So instinctively, I just went off of that history and the connection to land and these aquatic bodies, seeing the sort of feminine positioning in these geographical landscapes, then taking into account the feminine subversive figure in my work and in art history. It just felt something really natural to do because I had always explored this feminine gaze in one way or another. It's very layered for me. This was just one dimension, one portal. But sort of thinking about this matriarchal figure as a sort of steward, this sort of beacon of light to push humanity to a kind of brink of safety rather than despair.
And destruction, which is what we're seeing today.
Destruction. Yeah, exactly.
In your opinion, why is it important to preserve ancestral knowledge and the wisdom that comes from feminine intuition?
Because it's the only hope for the future.
We can't look to the patriarchy. It's not going to
No,
save.
no, it hasn't been working.
If we have any evidence at the moment, that's the sure evidence that we have.
Exactly, exactly. Pretty evident.
Yes. As we round out the episode, I like to ask this as a final question for everyone on the show. The curatorial theme to carry, which encompasses so many ideas, so many thoughts. It's very expansive. What does it mean to you?
In Sharjah, my baby was sick, so for me, it was to carry my child. That was like very, and to carry my child is it's a fully weighted thing, right? It's already, I've been transformed as a human, so I'm navigating that in my somatic sensing. Even whilst I made those paintings, my daughter was much younger, and I was carrying her while I was painting. So I know this act now. Like it's a new sensation to be able to have this extension of me. But yeah, I'm essentially carrying a member of future society, and I am responsible for how she will engage and socially commit to humanity. So for me, the best thing I can do is be her beacon, show her the way. So for me, it's instinctual for me to want to carry her. That's because I'm showing her that this landscape here, this landscape that you landed on, is the safe space, and we could navigate anything together. And then when she's ready, there it is. It's the big wide world. So that's for me the to carry part.
To hear you reflect on that, you have been forever changed. You are no
Mm.
longer the same person that you once were. And
Mm.
that happens many times over a lifetime, but
I call it little dying. We
it's
have this
happening the whole way through, isn't it?
all the way through. If you're not having little death, whew, good on you, but you need it. It's crucial.
Absolutely. We need to be reborn. We need to
Because
transform.
the little dying is what prepares us for what is the ultimate. which is it's the end, right? So we have to imagine what that is like. We haven't, so much in the West, we haven't even imagined what it is like when we go. Who will be by my side? What will I be doing? Will I be gardening in my favorite garden with my rhododendrons and the things? Or there's so many various possibilities, but we don't imagine it because we're so stuck in what capital tells us to do, which is to stay forever young. And so it's scary, the idea of dying. And you look at many parts of the Muslim world, there's an understanding that death is the ultimate, it's evident. And there's always a preparation for it. Their worldly desires is what you have to let go of. It's like that ego. So I think it was Susan Sensolo who I was her studio assistant, but she's also my mentor. And it was in some interview, and they asked her, what does she have to let go of? And she said, her ego. And there's always more to go. So I think that's it. It's like becoming a mother really lets go of a lot of the ego, especially as an artist. I think that's so important that the ego just keeps diminishing, because in the art world, they want to always build you up. The ego is not your amigo. Like, just let go of it. A little bit of ego is okay, but not too much.
To find that balance, no?
We have to find that balance. I think you can have a healthy self-awareness and a healthy self-confidence, but the ego thing, it's a different portal, and it's But so just the carry thing. And then, like, when I realized that the show of obviously, or the whole theme was to carry, then I saw the paintings of the mother and child. What is it that she's doing? And then I just came back from my trip in Angola, where I was at the Neza artist residency. And it's funny because I brought Arafa's stroller, but she refuses the stroller. She hates the stroller. So it's either she's doing her walking, which is at 90%, but I'm still following her. But I realized, I was like, none of the African ladies, they don't use strollers.
They carry their babies.
They carry their babies. That's it. It is the mother and child dyad. That's it.
That must be also so beautiful to see, especially as a young mother, as someone who's moving through the world. And we often, I think, individually can sit back and recognize at this moment so many levels of privilege that one has. I think about just the ability to travel and see the world is something that I think is easily one of the biggest privileges in life. Experiencing different cultures, eating different foods, seeing the way people live who are not like you. It really
Exactly.
helps to ground you.
Oh my, it's actually incredibly necessary, because I think if we did more of that as a society, then we would love each other more. My diplomacy comes because I understand where people are coming from and what their ideas are and what they're being fed by. Culture is such an inherent thing to people. So if you're not going out there and feeling the world and feeling what people's thoughts are, even if you don't agree with them, then you lost the bigger picture. So for me, it's something I was lucky to have, this sort of peripatetic, like, kind of way of moving around the world, understanding different viewpoints. And that's exactly what I would like for her to have. It's okay, you don't have to agree with everything, but here we are. We're human beings, we're complicated, and that's it. But we have to engage. We have to engage.
Cassi Namoda, it was such a pleasure to have you join me on an episode of Everything is Connected, the Sharjah Biennial 16 edition. I really enjoyed speaking with you today, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sade.
That was my episode with Cassi Namoda. I want to give a big thank you to Cassi for joining me on the show. Thank you for tuning in to this capsule season of Lightwork Presents Everything is Connected, the Sharjah Biennial 16 edition, sponsored by the Sharjah Art Foundation. These episodes were recorded both on site and remotely during the opening week and after the opening of the 16th edition of the Sharjah Biennial. During the episodes, you will hear the sights and sounds of the local environment from the various sites across the Emirate of Sharjah where the biennial takes place. I'm your host, Folasade Ologundudu, and I'll see you next time. Stay tuned for my next episode. As always, stay motivated, stay inspired, and stay up. Peace and love to all.